Hello there, and a huge welcome to this week's episode of Gina Gardner and Friends. Today I'm joined by Lynn Kirkham. I bring to you a huge array of guests, and I'm very excited about sharing this guest with you. She's the founder of Yes, You Can Speak. She has a superpower, and that's to help fearful, shy, and introverted people find their voice when it really matters and the stakes are high. And not surprisingly, our theme is going to be around finding your voice. So Lynn, a huge welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Gina. Thank you.
Before we get started, can you just give people a little bit backstory, how you've come to be doing this and why it's so important to you?
Yes, absolutely. I spent my life shy. My mom, I remember when I was 4 or 5, 6 years old, I used to hide behind her leg. And even if our neighbor came by on the street to say hi, who I loved, I would still hide because I was so shy. And then she used to rub my head, the top of my head, and just kept saying, she's so shy, she's so shy, she's so shy. And it became my identity. Being shy was like more a part of me than actually having a voice. And I remember when I was in college, public speaking was one of the requirements so that I could graduate from business school. And as soon as I found that out, I ran to my counselor and I just said, I can't do it. There's just no way. You have to make an exception for me. And she did. She made an exception so I could take interpersonal communication instead. And so I graduated, thank goodness. And I remember telling my fellow students that they couldn't have paid me $1 million to take the public speaking class because I was that afraid. I got into business. I worked for Hewlett Packard after college, and I used to pay people to speak for me. Like it was part of my job and I couldn't do it. And so never in a million years did I think that I would be actually teaching people how to find their voice.
There's a real strength though, isn't there? If you have something that you really struggle with and you overcome it and you find a way forward, you're really well placed to help other people. Sometimes, people go, those who are the ultimate masters in whatever they want to learn. And if you say to a master, how do you do it? They often say, I don't know, I just do. Whereas somebody who's had to go through step by step by step can actually support other people, I think, in a very different and perhaps more practical way. But before we go on, one of the things I want to say is, if you're a parent out there, or even if you're a boss, how often we install these beliefs about ourselves and how easily that becomes your identity. I'm reminded as a principal or head teacher, how often parents would say, just like me, no good at maths. And I'd say to them, you may not be as good at maths, but actually it's our job to find the key to teach them. So don't listen to your mum. You're not good at maths. We just haven't found the right way to help you yet. Because I was so keen for those children to stand on their own feet. And we did find a way to help them. We just didn't always find the same way to help them. But so there you are, you're paying people to speak for you. What made the difference?
Oh gosh, I knew, well, I had some deep-seated doubt, self-doubt, right? So much self-doubt, so much imposter syndrome. I just did not believe in myself. And I realized that in those moments when I did believe in myself, that something would ignite inside of me and I would push through, I would persevere, and I would win. And I spent most of my life doubting myself and keeping my vibration low and instead of spiraling up, I was spiraling kind of in place or down, right? I would go up and down, but it wasn't these great leaps. And so I really realized that it's our psychology, number one, that matters, and how we view ourselves really matters. I happened to have a mom that was very emotional and very critical. Um, and I spent, a lot of time thinking, how did I get lucky, this lucky to have a mom like that, right? That I couldn't really talk to, that wouldn't listen to me. Um, and and I realized that the way she was with me, even though she loved me and still does very, very, very much, um, her way of parenting was just hard. And I didn't feel seen or heard. And that instilled some beliefs in myself. And so I knew that I needed to let go of the trauma, let go of painful events around my mom and not being seen or heard or valued. And and once I did that, I was actually able to speak. It was pretty remarkable. Um, yeah. So I had to let go of the trauma or the fear of not being good enough, or for somebody, if I were to be in front, that I wouldn't be judged negatively. So that was the first step.
I'm sure your story resonates with lots of people, that what goes on in our childhood and the meaning that we make of it, because so often parents are well intentioned in their being critical. They want you to do well, they want you to do better than them, but they're clumsy about doing it, and so children take meaning from it rather um, than recognizing that actually children don't come with a manual, and the parents doing the best that they can, and their intentions are good, but it's not worked out that way. So we're going to go for a short break, but when we come back, what I'd like to examine with you is the you've talked about you let go of the trauma, you let go of that, all of that belief about yourself not being good enough, being an imposter. But I'd like to just explore how you help people do the same. So this is something that I think most people have times when they lack self-worth. Some people lack self-worth all of the time. We've been talking about your story and how you've gone from somebody who was shy and introverted to someone who's confident, not only to speak for themselves, but to help other people do the same. So what are from your journey, what are the things that you do to help people? What are the things that intrinsically make that shift from being so shy that you managed to convince your college to not make you do something which is actually part of the cause, because that was so difficult to you, to somebody who now could run the course that you were so frightened of?
Right, right. Yeah, it feels like a miracle. And what's wonderful is that I believe that if I can do it, that anybody could, right? That wow. Um, how did I do it? In the process of wanting to let go of the trauma around my mom, I created a modality called the core repatterning technique. Core repatterning, and essentially we identify where the trauma or that painful event or that I'm not good enough belief is located in the body, because it's not just in our brain. I wish things were just in our brain and then we could think them away, but for some reason they just keep coming back and back and back, as you know. And so I realized that, we do create a pain body, as Eckhart Tolle talks about in The Power of Now, that we create a pain body every single time we are traumatized in some way. It's in the body, it's in our cells. And so I've created a way to go into that pain body, which he says is so important, but I feel for me, it was impossible to do. Um, Let me just back up and just say, when he said, if you can just be with the pain body long enough, it will dissolve, the trauma will dissolve. And I tried that and I couldn't be with it long enough because my conscious mind was just like, "Oof, I don't want to stay there. It's just too uncomfortable." And so I created a way to mm, take people into an expanded state of awareness. Number one, get out of the thinking mind, go into the body, where they feel the trauma, and then give it voice in a very specific way, voice that maybe you swallowed, Like, I know that I swallowed so much of my voice when I was with my mom because she couldn't hear it, right? Or she would just make me wrong. And so we tend to swallow the words that we need to say. And then we tend not to just shake off a hurtful experience. Instead, we just ruminate over it and it gets lodged deeper and deeper. So essentially, in 4 sessions, 4 90-minute sessions, we can let go of a lifetime's worth of trauma, which sounds crazy fast, but it really, really works.
You know, one of the things I think that often people assume that trauma has to be big stuff.
Mm.
You know, and I've had guests on here who have dealt with what I call the big traumas, you know, life-changing accidents, abuse, you know, really very, nobody could deny that they were traumatic. And yet you talk about trauma, and my taking the meaning of that is each time that we have a hurt. And that can be an unkind word. It can be that somebody doesn't see us. It can be that we feel that we're not part of a group. And I think if you're listening to this, I don't want to overstate those things, but if you are consistently in receipt of those hurts, they build. And I've known people who go into what I call comparatonitis. Well, you know, my trauma is much worse than your trauma. What are you moaning about? Because, you know, mine was more painful and more this and more that. But actually, it's what meaning we make of it that's important, isn't it?
It's everything, right? It's the meaning that we make and the emotion that's tied to the event, right? So the more emotional you are about something, I mean, it can be a little T or a big T, right? It just doesn't matter. Like, it could just be my mom leaving the room and plugging her ears saying, la, 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 I don't want to hear your side of the story. It's my way or the highway. Or it could be, you know, somebody being severely beaten, right? Or emotionally abused. It's all trauma. And it seems that, you know, the shyer we are, the more sensitive we are.
Yeah.
You know, the more introverted we are, we just feel more. So we don't need somebody to yell at us to get the message. We just need the look, or just 1 or 2 words, even in a kind way, and we'll get it. Because, you know, deep down, especially as kids, we want to please. We want our parents to be happy. We just do. That's how we're programmed.
We certainly want people to love us and appreciate us, you know. And I would say to you that I know that those who are shy and introverted, they deal with trauma and the feelings in one way. But also I recognize that many people who appear very extrovert are often using that as a barrier to dealing with their feelings. You've only got to look at how many comedians, for example, have the public persona of being very hearty and how you think of Robin Williams, you know, but deep down they are hurting, and they use their extrovert persona to cover things up.
That is so true. Very, very true. Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind, that particularly looking at my own life and also the number of people that I've worked with, is that I think people are afraid of what they see as negative emotions, and so they bury them. I liken it, and people have heard me say this before, you know, I think of them as the dragon in the box, and you put them in the box and you put the lid on it, and the energy it takes to keep the lid on. And then every now and again, the dragon escapes and fights like fury because it doesn't want to go back in the box. Whereas if you are able to acknowledge that you're hurting, or whatever that negative emotion is, it's got a lesson, it's got a message for you. And I wonder, in terms of your healing modality, what opportunities there are created, not just to heal, but to learn from what's gone on.
Yeah, and I love the dragon in the box metaphor. That's so perfect.
Oh, and sometimes it breathes fire.
It does. It does. And, you know, I think about, in corporate life, for example. You know, you might be on a team, and there's, one person in the team who breathes that fire, and it really impacts the rest of the team. And usually it's because of past trauma that has not been resolved. It hasn't been processed out, that causes that person to be triggered, emotionally triggered, and then they react in the only way they know how, the way that their brain is programmed to react, which isn't always the best for the whole. And so I work with a lot of corporations actually who will send their problem, the people who are creating more havoc than they would like,
Okay.
to have the lifetime cleared of the unprocessed emotion, so that they can listen, they can be present, they can not react, but
Okay.
really have higher emotional intelligence.
We are talking about finding your voice. So I know that many people feel that public speaking is akin to those terrible dreams where you are exposed naked on the stage with all of those people watching. Bearing in mind that you're talking about healing trauma, is any of your work actually about then helping people to not only feel ready to find their voice, but actually to start using their voice? And what would you say to our listeners? What are the practical things that they could perhaps take on board?
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. I think it's a two-step process. So there's the very personal process of letting go of your life experiences that have created your subconscious mind to react the way it does. And then it's super important to have my students get into a group program that's really, really safe and supportive. Right now I've got an irresistible public speaking class going on, and we're right in the middle of it. And there's 25 people. And instead of videotaping and critiquing in front of the group, we build on strengths. Every single time they're together, we are together, they have 3 or 4 opportunities to speak or to be in front, be in the spotlight in a certain way. And it's always very positive and life affirming. And instead of being critiqued, because we have this program where we're afraid to be in front because we're afraid we're going to be judged. And if in the traditional style of public speaking training where you get recorded and you get critiqued, then that perception becomes even more ingrained. And so we unwind all of that by helping people see themselves in a very different way, number one. And then every single time they are in front of a group, and it's small groups, not, they don't have to speak in front of the large group, but small groups, that we build on their strengths, their natural strengths. Are they genuine? Are they real? Are they magnetic? Are they friendly? Are they open-hearted? Are they connected? And so I teach people how to connect with their heart, how to connect with their highest and best self, and then stay connected with the audience so the words just flow through them. They don't need to script, they don't need to memorize, and they can just plug in, essentially, plug into their genius, plug into their commitment, plug into their knowing, and then the words just come through that the audience is wanting to hear so that they can move them.
I would see this in 2 different ways. One is about finding your voice and being able to talk in a one-to-one basis or in front of a small group. And then there's the whole issue of public speaking to a large group, which I think has a very different feel, and there are different techniques and so on that are needed. But I think, when we talk about people being able to find and use their voice, for me, I think it starts with being able to be authentically who you are and to speak your truth. And I think there are so many people who avoid speaking their truth because, first and foremost, they don't want to any confrontation. And I think they make a huge mistake in assuming that confronting the issue means being confrontational. Because for me, there's never a need to be confrontational, but actually having a voice and being able to calmly say to people, you know, that I don't agree, or how you're behaving is making me feel uncomfortable, or, you know, I don't think that you're being fair to me. And they leave it and they leave it and they leave it until then they just can't hold on to it anymore. And then either they withdraw completely, or there's a big row because they blurt it out in a way that the other person can't hear. And it becomes very reactive and quite toxic. And so if we just focus on, you know, being able to speak your truth, and, you know, I believe, you know, the connection that we create with our inner wisdom and with source is so important. But if there are people who are out here who have got challenging parents, for example, or a challenging partner, or teenagers, and they want to be able to speak their truth, what advice have you got for them?
I think the biggest thing is to ground, like to get, to try to be out of your head and more in your heart, and to open your heart to the person that you need to speak to. And before doing that, if instead of going around and around and around in circles around how upset you are, how disappointed you are, instead making a list of 10 things that you're grateful for about that person. What are 10 things that you like about them, that you appreciate about them? And what that'll do is it'll help them to open their heart and see them as a human to human. And what's true, what I found is true, is that when our heart is closed, our guard is usually up. And then we're in our head, and other people will misinterpret what it is that we're trying to say. So the first and foremost is take some deep breaths into your belly. You know, just 3 long, deep breaths with the exhale longer than the inhale will put us from sympathetic, which is that fear or fight or flight mode, to parasympathetic, which is calm and more connected. And so I think that's number one. Number two is I have a lot of my students do some mirror work, which I have a feeling you know about, probably a lot about. Just looking in your own eyes in the mirror and connecting with your heart, with that bigger place inside of you, and just affirming that you are good enough, and that this conversation is going to go well, and that you've got this, and it's going to be a win-win, will really help calm your nervous system as well.
Yeah, I mean,
And
deep breathing is so important, isn't it? It takes you from left brain catastrophizing into right brain solution finding. You know, and I would say to people that if you've got a tricky conversation to have, then take some time to think about what is the outcome you want out of it. And if the outcome is that you want to be seen to be right, recognize that in doing so, you've got to make somebody else wrong. Whereas if you go into a conversation with the intention that you'd like to find a way forward that works for both of you, you're going to get a very different outcome.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah. How can you make it a win-win?
Yeah,
For sure.
It's been a real joy to have you. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been great. And I know you've got a very generous offer to our listeners.
Yeah. So if you're curious about what it would take to find your voice, and if you'd like 45 minutes of me coaching you, complimentary, I'd be happy to do that. So you could go to my website and just book a speaker breakthrough call for free, and we can identify the root cause of why is it that you're shutting yourself down. And I'll give you some tools to help you become confident right away and create a plan to get you speaking in a way that would make you proud.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for listening. To contact me, it's Gina, Gina, at Gina Gardiner with an I and friends. Love to hear from you. Love to hear what you think about the show. Any questions? And if you'd like to explore working with me, then please email me. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Bye bye now.